was not IDF personnel who were targeted or government officials who were targeted. It was the most helpless among citizens who were targeted. Why do you think that was the case? What was the thinking there?
I think the thinking of Hamas is to wage a war to end all peace, to make sure that there is never peace in the region. Nothing frightens Hamas more than the possibility of peace. Israel, the background to this attack is that Israel has signed a couple of peace treaties with Gulf states in recent years, and we were just on the verge of signing a historic peace treaty with Saudi Arabia, which was supposed to normalize relations between Israel and most of the Arab world, also to improve the lives of millions of Palestinians held under Israeli occupation in the occupied Palestinian territories, and possibly also restart the Israeli-Palestinian peace process. And this frightened Hamas, and this is why Hamas launched this terrible attack, and it did it in a way that was calculated to sow seeds of hatred, not for a few weeks or a few months, but for generations. Again, when you torture and kill parents in front of their children and make sure that this is publicized, you not only traumatize these children, you traumatize an entire nation. And the aim is to make sure that there is never a possibility of peace. And I think that Israel now is in a struggle, not just to protect its territory and citizens, but to protect its humanity. Despite what Hamas did, Israel must keep the possibility of peace alive.
So to that extent, the Israeli response now, there have been massive airstrikes across the last 10 days. Israel is preparing for a big ground invasion. Do you think, in that sense, Israel is sort of walking into the trap that Hamas has laid? Because Hamas, like you said, wanted exactly this. It wanted all these peace accords between Israel and its Arab neighbors to be completely blown out. There is no more possibility of the Saudi-Israel deal because Saudi Arabia has also taken its traditional position when it comes to the Palestine question. Has Hamas achieved what it wanted to achieve through the course of this terrorist attack? And is Israel, the US, and perhaps some of its Arab partners also, by doing what they have done in the last 10 days, walked into that trap? How do you get out of that trap?
Yeah, it's a very dangerous trap. Again, Israel needs to find a balance between its duty to protect its citizens and its territory. Again, on a very personal level, my surviving family members, they are now refugees. They just can't go back to their homes as long as a terrorist organization like Hamas exists and is armed a kilometer or two from their homes. On the other hand, Israelis should not go down to the level of Hamas. Unlike this terrorist organization, we should remain committed to international law, to human rights, to the hope for peace. So how to find this balance is very difficult, and we need help from our friends around the world. The United States has done some very, very important moves in recent days. On the one hand, giving full support for Israel, including even sending 2 aircraft carriers with hundreds of airplanes to Israel, and also at the same time restraining Israel from widening the circle of violence and putting pressure on Israel to adhere to international laws and norms. And I think that if Israel received similar support from our friends across the world, it will make it easier for us to do the right thing. Because again, what this attack really tried to do is to destroy our trust in humanity. When you witness such atrocities, this is really an assault on the mind, on the soul. It really destroys your trust in humanity, and then you lose your own humanity. And when outsiders like the United States, like India, in this moment of crisis, I think their important role is to help us regain our trust in humanity and make sure that we don't descend into the depth of depravity of an organization like Hamas.
Okay. I also want to know your thoughts, and there is this argument that's been going on for the last few days. There is a sort of moral equivalence that's being tried to be drawn. Hamas killing innocent Israeli civilians, and then the supporters of Hamas or the supporters of the idea of a Palestinian state saying that, well, Israel's going to kill innocent Gazan civilians as well. What do you make of this trying to draw a moral equivalence kind of argument?
I think we should be very careful about that. Again, we should have sympathy for human suffering or wherever it is. But Israel is not deliberately targeting civilians for the sake of killing civilians. A lot of civilians, millions of civilians in the Gaza Strip are now under enormous pain and fear. But Israel's aim is not to slaughter as many civilians as it can, in contrast to Hamas. Our aim, again, should be eventually to come out of this with a possibility of peace. Hamas was never willing. This is the thing, again, that frightens it more than anything else, the possibility of peace. So there is no moral equivalent there either. Again, I've been in recent years a very fierce critic of the Israeli government and of Israeli policies with regard to the Palestinians. I think Israel has made terrible mistakes in the way it abandoned many attempts to make peace with the Palestinians in its policies in the occupied territories. But this is no justification for what Hamas has done. And again, it should be very clear, Hamas didn't annihilate my uncle's community and murdered and tortured civilians in the hope of restarting the peace process. It really hoped to sow seeds of further violence and hate with this. And you see it also now with the hostages crisis. Hamas is holding hostage 2-year-old babies and 8-year-old grandmothers.
Yeah.
And I hear people say, well, you have to negotiate with Hamas and give Hamas something so Hamas will release them. Why do you need to give anyone anything to release a 2-year-old baby? This is unheard of. And one more point, many of these communities on the border with the Gaza Strip, people, they are not the settlements in the occupied territories. They are actually some of the last remaining bastions of the Israeli left and of the peace movement in Israel. I'll give you one, again, human story from my uncle's community. A 74-year-old woman called Vivian Silver, for years she lived under rocket attacks from Gaza, but she remained a very important peace activist. She, one of her missions was to drive sick people from the Gaza Strip to hospitals in Israel. And this she did for years, despite repeated attacks by Hamas. Now, she's 74 years old. She was kidnapped. We don't know where she is. We hope she's not dead. Hopefully, she is now held hostage by Hamas. I mean, why hold a 74-year-old peace activist hostage? Who does such a thing?
I also want to know, and one of the pertinent points that you made is the intent of Hamas in the October 7th barbarism was to target civilians, whereas the Israeli Defense Forces, in whatever operation they've undertaken over the last week or 10 days, or what they intend to undertake now, the intention is not to kill civilians. Civilians could be collateral damage, but I think that's an important distinction to make.
I cannot, I'm not familiar with every step Israel takes. I cannot defend necessarily every step Israel takes. Sure. I have my own suspicion of the government. But